Hi, everybody, and welcome. Today's live is going to be with Leah Doriol, who is the founder of Oceanic Global. Oceanic Global is a nonprofit dedicated to the preservation and healing of our oceans. So while we wait for Leah to join us, I will go into a little bit about this organization's incredible work and the event that's coming up on the 20th of April, which is their Ancient Wisdom and the Ocean event, which I'm so honored to be hosting. And this is an event that is really about sharing and preserving Indigenous wisdom on how to live responsibly and sustainably with our oceans. I don't know if some of you know the dire situation that our ocean is in, and the species that live in the ocean. For example, who among you knew that we're going to run out of tuna? Tuna as a species is about to be extinct. It's on a pathway to being extinct if we don't figure out how to fish tuna responsibly and sustainably, which we're definitely not doing right now. So that's one species that is at threat due to our modern ways of extracting from the ocean. And that's really the difference between how we in the modern world and Indigenous people operate. We think in our modern wisdom that the ocean is there for extraction, to just take, so that we can sell fish or whatever else we harvest from the ocean for a profit, and that's the purpose of the ocean. It exists there for us to extract for profit. But Indigenous people know that their livelihood and their lives depend on the health of the ocean, and so they manage to fish in a way that is sustainable, that is not taking any more than what they can put back into the ocean, and definitely not driving species into extinction because of their greed. And so this event is really going to be about highlighting, Oceanic Global. Let's see if I can do this. It's going to be about highlighting ancient wisdom from these cultures and communities, and learning how we can live more responsibly and sustainably with the ocean. Okay, so I am just figuring out how to do this, and after all these lives, I still haven't figured it out. It's always a mystery to me. Oceanic Global, can you please request? Thanks everybody for your patience, and excuse the bad lighting.
Hi, Nat. Sorry
Hi,
about
Beauty.
How are you?
Good. Excuse my hopelessness. How are you, Beauty?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be having this conversation with you.
Me too, especially as I just did a deep dive into all the amazing speakers and topics we'll be covering in this event. So firstly, I just want to thank you. Thank you for your initiative to start this organization. And I'd love to hear a little bit about more how Oceanic Global came to be, and you and your story and your involvement.
Thank you. Well, so grateful that you're here, like amplifying and also being part of our day event. It's really for us to be going in this direction. But for a little bit of background, I started Oceanic 5 years ago, and really our simple mission is inspiring people to care for the ocean deeply and looking at specific solutions to heal it. So at an individual level, looking at behavioral change, also working with specific industries to shift their practices, and then also working with specific institutions too. So really making sure that change happens at all different levels here. Yeah.
Amazing. And how did I heard that the idea came to you on the island of Ibiza, which is an island that I love very much. And yeah, it's one where I feel a deep, deep connection to the ocean. So I'd just love to hear a little bit about your personal story.
Yeah. So, I think being able to share Ibiza is this beautiful oasis. And I think that being there for me, it's this very sacred place, actually. And over the years, starting to see how Ibiza has changed from, the impacts of things like plastic pollution, and the fact that 8 years ago people weren't speaking about it, and really seeing this as a huge opportunity, was the shift that I personally needed in my life to think about what I was leaving behind and making sure that everything was aligned with my values. So that's where, in a little nutshell, the idea of Oceanic and kind of the inspiration action that I needed kind of started from.
And didn't weren't you part of the initiative to limit plastic on the island? Didn't you?
Yeah, so we did. When we decided to actually do the event, we decided to tap into universal passions such as art, music, emerging technologies to weave in specific calls to action. So plastic pollution was one of the major things that we were highlighting, as well as the local issue around the Posidonia, which is the seagrass there, just the clarity of the water. And there were big issues with people actually dropping anchors on it and then putting it out. And 15 centimeters of seagrass takes 100 years to grow.
Wow.
So, yeah, so two of the main things we were highlighting was one, the Posidonia, and two was plastic. And actually, the beautiful thing was that Ether pledged to go single-use plastic-free by 2023. And they also put a €10,000 ban on anyone that drops their anchors on the seagrass too. So really starting to see that when you bring enough people together with a specific call to action, you can have shifts in policies that take place.
Amazing. I know when you told me that, I was so inspired because it is an island that I love very much, and I am very concerned about the plastic use. And I had no idea about the seagrass taking 100 years to grow. And it's where everybody loves to come with their boats and their yachts and their ships and then drop anchor. And I didn't know that they were causing so much destruction. So this, for me, when you told me that story, I was like, wow, that's such an example of somebody really taking responsibility for a place that they love. And I'm so excited that, and really touched that you chose to dedicate this first year's Oceanic Global event to Indigenous people and their wisdom around protecting and stewarding our oceans, because we've come a long way from loving our oceans and loving the places where we live. And I was saying in the introduction that we're so extraction minded. We look at the ocean like a resource to extract. Yeah. And we don't think of it as this living organism with billions of other living organisms on whose survival, our survival, depends on.
Exactly. And
so, yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say, I think, we have so much to learn in terms of coming back into like rebalance actually with nature in itself. And I think when you're looking at traditional, local, and indigenous knowledge, which is really what our event on the 20th of April is about, and starting to see how to bridge this with, modern science, it's really the only way forward when we really think about what is this sustainable future that we're aspiring to build.
Exactly. It's not about saying that modern science is supreme, or that indigenous knowledge is supreme. We're at a time where we can intersect both and learn from both, because we're going to need all the resources we have at our disposal in order to regenerate our oceans, because they're in a really dire place right now. Not to be depressing, but I was mentioning the extinction of tuna. In the year 2050, there's going to be more plastic in the ocean than fish if we don't start taking action. And so you've dedicated this event. You've circled 4 key topics that we're going to cover, and you've brought in leaders from around the world, Indigenous thinkers and leaders from around the world, to share with us their wisdom around these 4 topics. Let me see if I can remember them.
Yes.
It's marine biodiversity.
Yes.
Okay. So making sure that we preserve all the different diverse species in the ocean. Climate resiliency, how to deal with the unescapable fact that ocean levels are rising. 3, you're gonna have to tell me the last 2.
Marine protected areas.
Marine protected areas. Explain a little bit more about that.
So I think, MPAs are becoming something that really the scientific community are looking at implementing around the world. So there's a lot of campaigns around, protecting 30% of our oceans by 2030. But
like protecting, like no fishing, like, right.
So it's complicated. It isn't actually like a universal standard. So each marine protected area kind of lays out its own rules. But what we're going to be discussing on the 20th is the fact that, these communities need to be a part of establishing a marine protected area, and that's the way that it will be truly sustainable, to make sure that illegal fishing doesn't take place, etc. So make sure that happens hand in hand with the communities that are living off them too.
Okay, good. Yes, because sometimes, like, we think, and this is something that Doon Lankard, who's an Indigenous EAC activist, who will also be speaking at the event, really taught me, is that traditional conservation methods of like just blocking all humans out in order to protect the natural world, that doesn't take into account the fact that not all humans are detrimental to the natural world. And in fact, and this is the other topic that you'll be covering, is fisheries. There is a way to fish sustainably, and Indigenous people know how. And we really need to learn from them, you know, not to take more than what we need, and not to take more than like what will be detrimental to the species and to the environment. And so they have like a millennia of experience in doing this, because they knew if they fished to the point of pushing a species to extinction, that would mean the end of their communities. That would erase their chance of survival. So it was in their interest to make sure that they were fishing in a way that was sustainable. And so did we cover the four now?
Yeah.
Because no, I am so fascinated by these topics, and I'm really excited that you've put this event together, to be able to dive in more deeply, and the list of people that you brought in from around the world is amazing. Continue.
No, I was going to say, you know, it's been amazing to see how you've been an advocate for so many different topics around the world, and now here you are talking about oceans. Can you share a little bit about maybe your journey also, you know, as an Indigenous woman, and why you're here, you know, lending your voice to this cause too?
Well, my ancestry is Indigenous Peruvian Quechua, and we're actually mountain people.
Mm-hmm.
But I was born in Lima, Peru, which is on the Pacific Ocean. And then when I was 2, we immigrated to Sydney, Australia, which is literally on the other side of the Pacific Ocean. So the Pacific in particular holds a very special place in my heart. And where I lived, which was very near the harbor in Sydney, whenever I would fight with my mom or like get into trouble as a teenager, this memory just came back to me. The place I would go was I would run down to the harbor, and I had my spot where I would sit on the harbor, and I would sit and I would meditate, and I would, not knowing, I was a teenager at the time, but like I was being recharged and having a moment of intimacy with that ocean, with that place, and that specific place on the harbor. And then a few years ago, I went back because I wanted to revisit that place. And I noticed a plaque there that I guess I hadn't seen in my adolescence, in my self-absorbed adolescence. And the plaque said that this is a sacred place for the Gadigal people, which are the Indigenous people of Sydney, on whose land Sydney sits on. And obviously they're ocean people, and people who lived and died by the ocean. I mean, if they didn't have the sustenance and the food provided by the oceans, they wouldn't have survived. So it was in their interest to be stewards of that sea and of that ocean and take care of it. And so I didn't realize that I had been sitting on Aboriginal middens, which are little rock formations that have been created over thousands of years by this community of Gadigal Aboriginals, eating their oysters and their clams and their shellfish and throwing it away and into the same place to literally create rock formations. This was a sacred gathering place for the Gadigal people. And when I realized that, and I realized that all that time I had been subconsciously like tapping into their intuition and their wisdom, and that the place I had chosen to meditate and to recharge is such a confirmation for me that, like, even though I haven't really presented as an Indigenous woman that most of my life, which is a whole nother Instagram live on why now it's so important to use my platform to give a voice to these cultures who have millennia's worth of wisdom on how to live harmoniously with the ocean that we have up until this point been ignoring, and look where it's got us. So I want to say thank you so much for creating this important event. I will be hosting. Can you please share some details on how people can sign up, and just some of the details? Yeah.
Amazing. So the event is actually, it's a free gathering taking place on the 20th of April. So starting off on Earth Week on that Tuesday. It's from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so New York time. And you can actually access our website, so oceanic.global, and sign up there. And maybe we can put in a link also in the description of this channel. So,
yes.
Send
me the link, and that will be in my bio. And I do believe I heard the recordings might be available later for watching, because if you can't join live, this information is too important to miss. So please just keep tuning in with Oceanic Global and make sure you follow them. And thank you again, Leah, for including me. And it's such an honor to be an ambassador for Oceanic Global and to be working with you and your amazing team of women.
No, we're so honored. Thank you, and grateful.